You don't have to do anything. He's doing it.
So let's begin this beautiful gathering in prayer. There's a school sister of Notre Dame, the community that taught me as a child, and whose founder is her feast day. She's a school sister and a theologian named Mary Maher. And she said that the charism of religious communities is like one of these Buddhist meditation bowls. She says the charism is the bowl and the mallet is the needs of the world. The bowl is silent unless it's struck by the mallet. And so our charisms sing only when they meet the needs of the world. Our charism was born when Vincent and Louise, whose feast day is also today, allowed their hearts to be struck by the needs of the poor of their age. Pope Francis has said that now the poorest of the poor is Mother Earth herself. So we gather this afternoon to reflect together on how the company of charity is called to respond to the cry of earth. So I will pray 3 intentions, and I'll sound the bell after each one. And we'll follow that by just a moment of contemplative pause. So as we begin, we pray for the entire company of charity, the hundreds of thousands of members of the different branches of the Vincentian family in virtually every country on earth. May we allow our hearts to be struck by the anguish of earth and of all of earth's creatures. May our charism sing anew. We pray for each congregation in the Sisters of Charity Federation. May we allow our hearts to be struck by the anguish of earth and all of earth's creatures. May our charism sing anew. We pray for each of us on this Zoom, all sisters, associates, partners in mission. May we allow our hearts to be struck by the anguish of earth and all of earth's creatures. May our charism sing anew in each of us. May the spirit of boundless charity bless this gathering. May the full reservoir of our charism spill forth, a rushing, vibrant stream to heal a thirsting earth. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Father Terry, for that wonderful prayer. And it's so good to see all of you. So good to hear the conversation before we began. I know we live in challenging times, of course, and so it's always good to be surrounded by energy, by friends, by people we don't know, strangers who share the same charism and the same mission. So welcome everyone. I'm going to take a few minutes just to set some context for today's gathering. For those of you who don't know me, my name's John Shively. I work alongside the Sisters of Charity of Leavenworth in Leavenworth, Kansas. And last November, Charity Earth Network Steering Committee and I wasn't on the steering committee at the time, worked together to gather members of the Charity Federation to gather over Zoom, in which we called Boundless Charity Embraces Earth. Probably some of you were there, I'm guessing. Some of you may not have been, and that's okay too. But we had the chance to explore the charism of charity and the Laudato Si Action platform. We encountered at the session prayer, presentation, and what I thought was a really rich sharing as our congregations just sort of began the journey and began exploring what it meant to undertake the Laudato Si Action platform in our own ways. And we find ourselves here together again to talk much the same about as we did last time, although I hope perhaps a little more concretely to share and learn and explore with each other about where the Federation is at this time. I'm sure all of you have encountered challenges of one type or another in the journey to implementing the Laudato Si Action platform so far. Our hope for today's gathering is to begin to speak more concretely about the ways we can respond, have responded, or will be responding to the call to live out Laudato Si and the journey to integral ecology. I am reminded of a very small snippet of a very long title of Sister Peggy O'Neill's wonderful keynote that she gave at the Federation gathering in 2019. And the beginning of that was, "These times beguile us with more questions than answers." And I think this is still true today as it was nearly 3 years ago when she gave that talk. More questions than answers about how to implement Laudato Si Action platform, about how to live out integral ecology, about process, about community, about collaboration. And so our hope today is that our sharing can provide at least maybe a few answers, a little bit of wisdom about where to begin, and that the questions we ask together can continue to point the way. So without any further ado, I will introduce Sister CJ Willie, a Sister of Charity of Cincinnati and Program Director of Earth Connection. She's also on the Charity Earth Network Steering Committee, and probably someone who needs little introduction in this room. So I will hand it over to her.
Oops. 1 second. Let me go back a minute. Okay, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
They decided to mow the lawn outside right now. So that's in the background. Okay, the presentation I'm going to do is one I did for my congregation at our spring forum last week. And what I'm going to do is simply walk through this 7-year journey of sustainability for Earth and all of her inhabitants, known as the Laudato Si Action Platform. So What is it? Well, it's a collaboration between the Vatican, an international coalition of Catholic organizations, and all men and women of goodwill. As all of you know, this particular encyclical was written to the people of the world, not just to the people in the Catholic Church. It creates a whole that is greater than the sum of its parts, and it empowers decisive action here and now on the way to adopting full sustainability in the spirit of integral ecology. And that is Pope Francis's goal, is that in 7 years, we have adopted full sustainability as a way of life. Integral ecology emphasizes the deep connections between our relationships with each other, our Creator, and all creation. It brings together the efforts of people and institutions around the world, building a global community that is committed to walking together, one human family, dedicated to realizing our loving God's call for a new dynamic relationship with our common home. And so there are 7 goals that have been put forth for this platform. The first is the response to the cry of the earth. And this is a call to protect our common home for the well-being of all, as we equitably address the climate crisis, biodiversity, loss, and ecologic sustainability. The second is the response to the cry of the poor. And this is a call to promote eco-justice, becoming aware that we are called to defend human life from conception to death and all forms of life on earth. And Francis says very clearly, today, however, we have to realize that a true ecological approach always becomes a social approach. It must integrate questions of justice in debates on the environment, so as to hear both the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. And throughout the encyclical, he comes back to that theme over and over again. We cannot address one without addressing the other. Another goal is ecological economics, a call to acknowledge that the economy is a subsystem of human society, which itself is embedded within the biosphere, our common home. And Francis is not the first to talk about this. Both Benedict and John Paul II really talked to us about critiquing our capitalist system. And that's what he's talking about here, recognizing that our economy has to be a subsystem of the entire human society, not that which we aspire to. So how well off are the world's richest people? Well, the richest 1% of people in the world now control 50% of the money in the world. Everybody else shares the other 50%. He says, we have created new idols. The worship of the golden calf of old has found a new and heartless image in the cult of money and the dictatorship of an economy which is faceless and lacking any truly humane goal. Together with the social responsibility of businesses, there is also the social responsibility of consumers. Every person ought to have the awareness that purchasing is always a moral and not simply an economic act. He talks about the need for the adoption of a sustainable lifestyle. He said it has to be grounded in the idea of sufficiency and promoting moderation in the use of resources and energy. And as I was reading this, I was recalling a UN program I went to in Bonn, Germany on the environment. And finally, one person stood up and said, what we have to learn is we have to learn to say enough. I have enough, I am enough, we are enough. So we have to look at responsible consumption, sustainable mobility, sustainable food, sustainable design, recycle and use less plastic, environmental education. And one of the goals is specifically dedicated to ecological education, rethinking and redesigning curricular and institutional reform in the spirit of integral ecology in order to foster ecological awareness and transformative action. Another goal is the need for an ecological spirituality, a profound ecological conversion that helps us to discover God in all things. All Christians, Francis tells us, need an ecological conversion whereby the effects of their encounter with Jesus Christ become evident in their relationship with the world around them. Every now and again, we must take a look at something not made of human hands, a mountain, a tree, a star, or just the turn of a stream. There will come to you a great wisdom, patience, and solace, and above all else, the assurance that you are not alone in the world. Find relief where the pines flourish and the jay still screams. This comes from Mother Earth. The last goal is community resilience and empowerment, a synodal journey of community engagement and participatory action at various levels. So connecting, engaging, educating. And the resilience factors are to take care of yourself, active problem solving, meaning and purpose, social support, and maintaining a positive outlook. Okay, the ecological conversion action is a 7-year journey, and there are planning guides for each of the entities that the Pope is asking to engage in this 7-year journey: families, parishes and dioceses, educational institutions, hospitals and healthcare centers, the economy, businesses, cooperatives, farms, organizations, NGOs, movements, groups, foundations, communication centers, and religious orders. And so the rest of this particular PowerPoint is designed to take a look at what is being asked of religious congregations. A website entitled Sowing Hope for the Planet was created by the UISG as a campaign for religious congregations to participate in the Laudato Si Action platform. It's a project in which every sister whose congregation is a member of UISG, and that's all of us, and their connections are provided with an opportunity to make a difference in our care of the planet. This project is a collaborative effort of the JPIC Commission in the name of UISG and the Laudato Si movement. There were several webinars conducted by Sister Laurie Brink, who talked specifically about religious and their commitment to the Laudato Si Action platform. And so I'm going to quote here from some of her work. She says, "We are at a transformative time in religious life. A theological foundation can enable us to consciously integrate the Laudato Si Action platform into our ongoing work as religious congregations. The key to our response is viewing our congregational charism through an evolutionary vision of the reign of God. Today, the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor demand that we revision and integrate our mission and ministries in light of the call of Laudato Si. So why does this matter now? Why us? What are we to do about it? And how are we to do it? So why does it matter now? Scientists tell us that we live in the Anthropocene, a new geological epoch in which global human activities are affecting the earth and its atmosphere, and not for the good. The Anthropocene is named after humans because it is a period of history in which humans are having massive earth-changing impacts affecting our atmosphere, polluting our air, land, and water, even changing DNA through genetic modification. Why us? Well, none of these effects on Earth and its creatures is solely our responsibility as vowed religious. But because of our commitment to the gospel, our abiding faith that what is now is not what God intended, and our compassion for those who suffer and are forgotten, the urge to respond is deeply part of our DNA. So what are we to do about it? Well, let's put our charism at the service of the church and the people of God. That's what we do. In the language of Vatican II, we women religious have taken to heart the call to respond to the signs of the time. Faith against culture was out, and the need for a positive relationship between faith and the culture in which a religious congregation lived and worked was emphasized. But today we have new signs of the times. When we set out on a journey, when we are on our path, we always encounter new things, things we did not know. And this should make us think, am I attached to my things, my ideas? Are they closed? Or am I open to God's surprises? Am I at a standstill, or am I on a journey? Am I able to understand the signs of the times and be faithful to the voices of the Lord that is manifested in them? We need to strengthen, Francis tells us, the charism of the congregation without mistaking it for the apostolic work which is carried out. The first remains, the second will pass. The charism is creative, always looking for new paths. Our underlying charism continues, even when particular ministries can no longer be carried on as strongly as they were, or when they are no longer necessary or no longer possible. When that happens, we need to look again to our beginnings to understand what our charism is asking of us today. The same Christ, the same Spirit, the same vocation that inspired our predecessors is calling us now to be awake and watchful. The gifts and charism that marked the beginnings of our congregation is alive today by the same power of the same Spirit who awakened them in the first place. How are we to do it? Laudato Si constitutes an invitation for found religious to respectfully and courageously enter into a dialogue with other persons of goodwill. The fruits of scientific research and contributions from varied faith traditions can move our pluralistic society toward a consensus on the urgent need for action. The common good will be enhanced as religious give voice to the poor and marginalized. By their actions, religious will offer a prophetic witness on the value of interpersonal communion and an ecologically sensitive relationship with all creation. Some of you may recognize Sister Paula Gonzalez there on her Sunny, her little golf cart with the solar panel. And Paula was calling us for probably 30 years, calling, pushing, and begging us to move forward. And today I am sure she was looking down to say, okay, finally you're listening. The gospel includes human well-being and the well-being of all creation. And I love this quote from Leonardo da Vinci. He says, learn how to see, realize that everything connects to everything else. And so I'm going to tell you what we are doing, and then Margaret will share some of what her congregation is doing. And then we'll open it up to invite all of you to share what you are doing so we can learn from each other. Our communications officer has a graphic artist, and she designed this as our symbol for our Laudato Si work. So the questions we want to be looking at is, how might viewing our charism through the lens of Laudato Si inspire and inform our mission and ministries during this time of transformation into the future? And in what concrete ways might we collaborate in new ways with other congregations or civic groups to advance the goals of the Laudato Si action plan? So those questions are kind of just in the background as we look at these today. There are 3 actions which are required for participation in the action plan: uploading a reflection document or video so that others may learn from and be inspired by your commitment; uploading a document or video that outlines your Laudato Si plan, which will be shared so that others may learn from and be inspired by the unique ways that you act in community; and then completing the baseline evaluation and annual self-assessment each year. And this has now become optional. I've participated in probably 15 or 20 webinars on Laudato Si, and each time there were so many questions and so much confusion about doing this portion that they have made it optional. So some of the suggestions that they offer are to develop reflections on the connection between our congregational charism, spirituality, and the Laudato Si goals, to align our congregational discernment to the LSGs, the Laudato Si goals, to animate, support, and accompany local communities toward the achievement of the LSGs, to develop and adopt financial policies that promote integral ecology. In other words, looking at the possibility of divesting from fossil fuels, engaging in the development of alternative fuels such as solar power and geothermal, to include integral ecology in formation programs, both at the level of initial and ongoing formation. So there are 4 ways of engaging the congregation: by reflecting, acting, evaluating, and celebrating. So the reflect portion is the see and judge portion. We want to begin with an assessment of our community's engagement with the Laudato Si goals. This will establish a starting point for our reflection on what we're already doing. We want to identify the issues in our region, town, village, or city where you are located, which relate to Laudato Si. You want to share and record stories or examples of the challenges to action they raise for your community. Now, these are some of the things that we're looking at doing. First of all is we want to look at what we are already doing. So at our spring gathering, I invited sisters in small groups to do 2 things: to look at what we were already doing, and then to give some suggestions as to what we might look at for our Laudato Si action plan. And we realized that we have a lot of sisters working on different issues, and not everybody is aware of that. So we've committed ourselves to doing some short videos on sisters who are working in the areas of homelessness, housing, traffic, poverty and inequality, immigration, refugees, peace, nonviolence, care for creation, and multiple other things that already are being done. We want to learn about the people in our midst who have come from other countries. We realize that we have 14 countries represented working in our retirement center. So we want to know, why did they come? What are the environmental conditions in their countries? So 2 of our sisters have volunteered to interview the employees on our campus, and again, do short videos that we can share. We want to provide prayer resources. There are some available on the internet, so we will let people know about them, but we're also inviting sisters and associates to share prayers and reflections they have developed and create our own SC prayer and reflection guide. On our Sister of Charity website, we have a special section that's dedicated to the Laudato Si Action Platform initiatives. And once a week, I try to put I'm the liaison for our congregation for Laudato Si. And so once a week, I try to put some initiatives that are taking place that sisters might take a look at. It will contain suggestions for prayer, as well as websites for continuing ongoing formation about the LSAP and ideas shared by other religious congregations. It will also highlight the initiatives we are taking as Sisters of Charity. This would include what individual houses are doing, as well as the congregational commitments that we make. And this idea I borrowed from Carol D'Angelo. She had sent me a copy of some that she had done, so I adapted it for our congregation. And this can be used as a monthly reflection sheet, a quarterly reflection sheet, however we choose to do it. And so we're taking a theme for each month, and then we're using a quote from Laudato Si, and then a quote from one of our documents, our constitutions, our charism statement, or our vision statement. And then some questions for reflection, a prayer, and then some possible actions that sisters can take. And if any of you would like an example of that, simply email me and I will be happy to send you the ones that we have done. I did 2 of them. And then I am inviting other sisters in the congregation to participate in doing some of the others. We'll be doing monthly webinars and they'll be offered at several different times. And sisters and associates will be invited to contribute as well as to host some of those webinars. So some of the possible themes we might use are: what is the platform? How do we live Laudato Si? Spirituality and our call to ecological conversion, Catholic perspectives on sustainability, Catholic social teaching, and the UN Sustainable Development Goals, as well as the connection between climate change, poverty, and migration. Those are just possible themes. There are, I'm sure, many others. And then on our SC Federation website, the Charity Earth Network will continue to give updates as to the actions that we are taking and other things that we are inviting people to participate in. And then we're doing this webinar today. And this was advertised on the Federation website. On our SC Federation Facebook page, I am continuing to do something I did for my own congregation. During Advent, each day of Advent, I did a photo reflection on a quote from Laudato Si. And I am doing them once a week on our SC Federation Facebook page. And so I am choosing a quote from Laudato Si, and then just one question. How will you allow yourself to discover God today in the world around you? So I've invited other sisters in the congregation to participate by sharing their photos and ideas they might have to do this. We're also forming Laudato Si circles, and this is a variety of options. There's no one right way of doing this. So we can do bi-monthly Zooms for those who wish to engage that way. We can put forth some ideas for our small groups. We have small group configurations within the congregation. We might form small groups just among some of those who are interested, who might live near us. Or we might simply find one other person with which we wish to share this journey. So there's no one right way of doing this. We're inviting sisters to participate at whatever level meets their needs and at which they feel comfortable. We will be doing some book suggestions. Carolyn Crower with the SCNs had done the one Under the Sky We Make, and we can offer more of these. And again, this doesn't just have to be us doing this as Charities of Cincinnati, but each of the congregations might choose a book and host a webinar on it for discussion. And then to judge and discern, to examine and discuss the causes of the challenges identified by sisters and associates in the context of Laudato Si goals, and to record responses to these challenges as part of your Laudato Si plan. We can consider and record how the unique charism and the mission of your congregation, together with the Laudato Si goals, helps you address these issues and the challenges they raise. And mindful of your reflection process to judge and discern, you may draw on applicable scripture and Catholic social teaching. And then act, establish overall SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. These are the goals you would like to reach through your Laudato Si action plan. Create an annual plan of action and upload it to the LSAP website. Implement the actions you have chosen. Evaluate and celebrate. Complete an annual self-assessment to see how your practices have evolved. Based on the results of your annual assessment, reflect on your journey thus far. Consider revisions to your plan for the coming year. Upload the results of the above 3 to the LSAP website. Participate in annual celebration hosted by the Dicastery for Promoting Integral Human Development. Celebrate within your own congregation. So what is needed now? So I asked for sisters and associates who are willing to form an LSAP committee to contact me. And we don't have to meet regularly. I simply want people who are interested in doing something more. And so a number of sisters have already done so. I've invited the sisters and associates to share prayers and share any resources they find. This doesn't have to just be my congregation. We can do this stuff as a federation. God has given your congregation unique gifts, which you alone can bring to our shared project of building a better future. And so let's begin. Let's see how we might work together. We don't all have to reinvent the wheel. Each of us is doing something. And the webinars I mentioned, those are things that we can share with the Federation. They don't just have to be for my congregation. What we are doing with the short videos, other congregations might do also, and we might post those on our Federation website so that we're really learning more about each other and learning to collaborate in a way that makes the whole much greater than the sum of its parts. Thank you.
Thank you, CJ, for sharing that with us. That was excellent. Next, I want to introduce Sister Margaret O'Brien, who is on the leadership team of the Sisters of Charity of New York and leads the congregation's response to the Laudato Si Action Platform. And she's going to share a little bit of perspective about what New York is doing.
Thank you, John. But first I need to say thank you to Carol Jean, CJ, because I knew you would do a great job, and you certainly have. I particularly loved the part where you spoke about why us, why now, and made the connection between what's happening in our world, what's happening in religious life. Not to mention then all the suggestions you have for action. They're marvelous. You're way down the pike. We're trailing along. Okay. And I just want to do a little disclaimer. There's nothing I'm going to say that's particularly outstanding or original. It's simply what we've been doing as we've limped along and learned along the way. And just as all of your congregations have been doing over a number of years, there's been a growing awareness, right, about Earth and her needs. And we've followed the prophets among us. You mentioned Paula Gonzalez, and I was glad. I thought I recognized her on that little cart. And in our case, we've had Marianne Garisto and Carol D'Angelo, who led us in awareness of our Hudson River, and have been active in religious along the river, helping us to understand the whole bioregion. They've led us in things like, over the years, studying the Earth Charter, right? We had leaders in understanding corporate responsibility and shareholder resolutions like Regina Murphy and Claire Regan, and all kinds of other environmental, social, and governmental concerns through our investments. And through the years, we've had a number of different movements. We had our Vision 2000, and you can't really see it because of a relay, but it was one of our assembly enactments, which focused on care of the poor, women, and earth. For the first time there, we spoke about reverencing creation in a spirit of interconnectedness with all that is and living responsibly. We developed in those years the land policy and the land ethic, and we had committees start like global poverty, immigration, a unique one, CTE, Creations Transformative Energy. They have focused on cosmic awareness and spirituality and have been educating us over the years. We've had little book discussion groups. We've had lots and lots of effort for advocacy and learning about recycling. We have a weekly bulletin. We had called it Le Gras Bulletin. Now it's called Focus. And every week it's filled with advocacy and awareness opportunities. So, and that has continued for a long, long time. It's only increasing now. And, we began to hear from sisters, well, how come we're using plastic bottles at our community meetings? The awareness grew. And then, of course, in 2015 comes the Laudato Si. And what we made sure that every sister received a copy. We encouraged people to form discussion groups, do whatever that they wanted to do. And we did have some prayer and education, mostly led through those committees or through the Peace and PJIC office, in our case, Sister Carol mostly. And things just continued to evolve. Some major projects that came around the same time were covering a large parking lot on the campus here with solar panels. And that was done in collaboration with our College of Mount St. Vincent. We put in low flow toilets in some of our properties, very practical step. We have formed the Sisters of Charity Land Trust at Mount St. Vincent, which puts this whole campus, or most of it anyway, into a trust for the future. And around the same time, we put a good piece of land that's in its natural state up in Dutchess County into a conservancy. Around the time of the elections and Black Lives Matter, we formed the Voting and Anti-Racism Committee, which has been very active and helpful to us. So and during this period, we also have rewritten the guidelines for our investments. And we have been divesting, moving away from fossil fuel and moving into clean energy investments and things that mitigate against the climate problems. So a lot's been happening. And then in the fall of 2020, the council was working on its goals for the year. And among all the ones for finances and property and care of the sisters and everything that need to be done around ministries, we also put in a goal to work harder at dismantling racism and deepening our understanding of Laudato Si. We've been learning all of that, but we had a sense that there's so much more really to be converted, to really get into what sustainability and act and pray out of our sense of interconnectedness with creation. So, but how? How do you do all that? And our first step was to ask all those committees to say, how is the work that you're doing furthering the goals of Laudato Si? And they each did that, and that was good. And then we began to read and hear about this Laudato Si action platform. Sounded good. What particularly appealed to us was the support that we would get from each other, from all the resources that would be put out there, and just feeling part of a global church-wide movement that towards sustainability. It felt doable when we thought about doing it all together and being part of that critical mass that's needed for a real change. So the council talked about it through the rest of 2020 and into 2021. And in April, the leadership team announced our intention to form a committee to engage in the platform, and then issued an invitation to form a committee, went out to our sisters and associates to be the group that would lead us in this. At the same time, that CTE, Creation's Transformative Energy Group, was also discussing and planning some activities. They planned a tree planting, which was done in June of 2021. And it was kind of an informal out and public commitment to join the Laudato Si platform. A marker was placed under the tree, and it's right on the main road of the campus, so that the students all encounter it as well. And we registered on the Laudato Si website. We thought that was it. It was only later we realized, oh my goodness, there's a whole big enrollment process. But the committee began meeting in June, and it was from the beginning, they were an enthusiastic and committed and passionate group. So much so that I kept in mind so much of what they said at the very first meeting about why they wanted to do this work. I'll come back to that. We spent that first summer educating ourselves about this whole process and the movement and the requirements, which we found things to be pretty fluid, changeable, and sometimes downright confusing. One of the things we knew was that we would need to assess where we are as a congregation. You know, how aware are we? What have we been doing? How responsive are we? And some of the things we learned in that summer was that we should embed whatever goals we choose to work on within the congregational goals and within the charism. That felt right. We learned that there should be a yearly tracking of progress and renewing the plan each year and celebrating progress, just what CJ outlined for us. We felt in that summer kind of unready to really do a full plan, even though we were very impatient to be about action. So what we decided was that our year one would be a year of engagement. Okay. And we started it by deciding that September 27th, the Feast of St. Vincent de Paul, would be our formal public statement of commitment. We reserved the chapel, planned a ritual, and wrote our statement. Sisters from our retirement house, our convent here on the property, and other residences on the campus, college students, and some faculty, including the president, attended. And during that ritual, which was mostly about Laudato Si, we took the opportunity to inaugurate a new joint food distribution program, a ministry between the college and the congregation. We called it Vincent's Table, and it's a direct response to hearing the cry of the poor. And both of the presidents, our congregational president and the college president, announced it during the ceremony. One member of the committee took the initiative to ask a friend of hers to hand paint this bowl, which we now call the Earth Bowl for obvious reasons. And actually, I should have put on gloves to handle it. We're very careful with it. It became the centerpiece of that ritual. And it now sits in the reception area here at our administrative center. So during the ceremony, following an explanation of Laudato Si and the process and all of that, we invited all the attendees to join us on this sacred journey. We read the statement, which was on a card like this. And I'm going to show you this and then hide it, because the first part we included in this statement a quote that's called the Iroquois 7th generation principle. You may have heard it. And it goes like this: in all our deliberations, we must be mindful of the impact of our decisions on the seventh generation to follow ours. Seemed like great wisdom. And one of our members had taken a photograph of a sculpture that exists illustrating that principle. We used a photograph on our card, but quickly replaced it because we found out that it is owned and you have to pay to use it. So instead, we now use one of the icons that's available to us through the websites. During the ceremony, we offered these little cards as a pledge, and then they were placed in the bowl. There are some there now. And it just simply says, in the spirit of Laudato Si, I, so-and-so, pledge that I will pray, I will learn, I will act to renew the face of the earth. And they were signed and dated. And as a reminder to keep that up, we did what Carol told CJ about, and CJ's group is now doing the same thing. We have a monthly reminder, which has some things to learn, some quotes from Laudato Si or our Constitution or whatever, maybe a video to watch, and a prayer, and some suggested actions, very similar to what CJ showed you. So, and this is ongoing. So, a word about our statement. Oh, I think I told you that already, excuse me. Basically about the learning we had on the picture. An obstacle encountered, a learning we had. Okay, so we continued the engagement by repeating in the fall and spring. The committee focused on a series of activities that would help us to engage people. And at the same time, we struggled with the enrollment process. We repeated a short version of our ritual in several places, at retirement, one of our retirement houses, and at a senior citizen ministry, housing ministry that we have. More pledges were received. We held a joint meeting with the CTE committee to kind of clarify what each of us was doing. And since we have some joint members, the communication flows very well between us. We held a staff meeting for our center staff here at Le Gras meeting, and tried to help them to see what we were doing and to get them motivated to be involved. They were enthusiastic and anxious to be involved. They wanted to revive something that we had had before, the green team, which ended with COVID when we couldn't do anything to meet. But things are picking up again. On Earth Day, in the morning, we sent out an email to all of the staff, including some beautiful pictures that one of our counselors has taken. And on each picture, all natural pictures, animals and scenes, with a quote that was kind of arresting, that would make you think. And usually it had something to do with encountering God in nature. So we sent those out, and we suggested and announced at 11:30 over the intercom system that would you stop now and reflect on a couple of those pictures, and then join us outdoors in another 10 or 15 minutes for an outdoor prayer. So we gathered outdoors around the Earth Bowl for a very simple prayer service that people got very involved in. They shared things that they are doing. And participation was really very lovely. Right now, we're planning for a congregation day on June 11th, and Terry Moran is our speaker that day. We hope to accomplish several things, which I will explain as I go a little further through the process that we've been involved in. The day was supposed to be really all about Laudato Si, but circumstances intervened. And now we are sharing the day with the steering committee for our assembly that's happening next year. And since the Holy Spirit is pretty active in things like this, I kind of suspect that that's a providential event linking Laudato Si and assembly and future thinking. So I'm really, in the end, pleased about it. Now to address the enrollment process. The survey. As we understood that we were supposed to do an assessment, a reflection, and then create a plan. And as far as the assessment tool was concerned, we heard from many others, as CJ said, and in attempting to do the assessment, we found it extremely complex. The questions that we were supposed to answer were just almost beyond doing. And so a couple of us were addressing it little bit by little bit, but it kept getting put off because you couldn't quite figure out what to do with it. And the delay turned out to be a gift, because then it was dropped as a requirement. But at the same time, we already knew and had decided that we needed to do some kind of a survey to find out where people are in their understanding, their awareness, their responsiveness to the goals. So we decided to use that as our kind of assessment. What we did, there was a tool that was created by Sister Arlene Flaherty, a Blow Belt Dominican who works with the SSND sisters. And they had put out a survey assessing the sisters' awareness of each of the goals and their responsiveness to us, and invited anybody who wanted to. So we just adapted it as they invited us to. And we recently have sent that out. One of our members on the committee transferred it to a Google document, and that we just got the results last Friday and started to do the collation, which is in process. But basically, we had about little more than a third of the congregation, plus several associates and colleagues who also filled it out. And from what I understand, a third is a pretty good response, especially when you consider we're dealing with a community that has a median age of 85. So that was really very good. One of the things we learned and thought about a lot in doing the survey was the fact that it would not apply at all to our members and associates in Guatemala. That's something we haven't yet solved. And I think we'll have to make that part of our next year's goal, ways to incorporate in a very real way a group of people whose reality is quite different from ours. But that survey we will adapt and use for our annual assessment, I think. The enrollment process also included reflection. And I think what was meant by that was that there would be that what would be written or created into a video was the outcome from a series of reflection experiences in a congregation, kind of a bottom-up thing. But in our case, the committee is doing the reflection, and we hope to present it on June 11th to the congregation. That's the congregation day. Originally, we thought we were working toward an April deadline. And so we thought, well, what's the quickest way to do this? Let's do a video. You know what? We're always meeting on Zoom. So we'll just do a Zoom conversation, repeating some of the things we said at that first meeting about why this was so important, and answering the questions in the guidelines about what experiences of the congregation relate to Laudato Si, and how does the charism promote Laudato Si goals. We even did a little rehearsal of it, and it turned out pretty good. But in reality, it was kind of amateurish, and we figured, well, when we found out that the date is moved back, let's do it better. So we do have a videographer who came in last week and recorded a little bit more formal type conversation, which now has to be edited and have visuals put with it and so on. But that will be uploaded as our reflection. And more importantly, we're going to use it with the sisters. So we hope that they'll make the connections between Laudato Si and our thinking about religious life for the future, especially in relation to this next assembly. And that leaves us with the plan. Okay. As you've gathered by now, we have several pieces to this June 11th Congregation Day. And one of the pieces that I didn't mention yet was having the congregation help us create the plan. That's the next step and has to be done over the summer. And we need to identify what the sisters too feel are the priorities. You know, there are many. We're involved in many different ways. Which ones should we emphasize as a whole congregation effort? Do we look at big issues that are local, like homelessness, or the atomic energy plant not too far up the river, and how to shut that down safely? Narrowing our focus is part of what we need to do, and we'd like to have their help in doing it. during this past year, when we were still groping with our kind of the impulse to act. And I had created a grid that lists all the goals and some possible actions that could be taken in relation to each one. We'll pull that out again and see. It might help us to focus a little bit better. So, but one of the things we've had to resist this past year is the impulse to be very active and be about planning in favor of what we said we wanted to do, which was engagement. So it's been a balancing act. And I think what I'd like to say now is a little bit about the learnings. Okay, where are we? We're in process. We're making slow but pretty steady progress toward engagement and action. And we're learning as we go. And we're trying to build on what already exists. Those committees, different departments that here at the SC Center. And later we'll connect more directly with our ministries and with Guatemala. Those are important. One of the nice things is in terms of ministries, the college is also engaging in the Laudato Si process. So that's a good one. We've heard the message of flexibility. There are many paths to this goal of transformation. It's a qualitative rather than a quantitative thing. And we need to figure out which road fits best for us. We look to Laudato Si action platform people for support and guidance in the process, and that is available to us. There's a lot, even just what you heard today, even doing this today is support. One learning has been to look at all those webinars, websites carefully. Like instead of being like, we're trying to learn to be gourmets, pick and choose quality instead of the hungry person who goes to grab for everything. We're more curators of all this material than consumers. So we learn to take what's useful and let the rest go. The involvement of our leadership team has been very encouraging to the committee members. Several of whom have been at this for a long time. Some of them are the prophets I mentioned earlier, Carol and Mary Ann and Claire. And so they have really appreciated the fact that this leadership team is explicit in its support. And one very important learning, don't get caught in unreal expectations, especially when we consider where we are as a congregation at this point, 85 and above mostly, a community of elders. So that reality should shape the priorities for creating the plan. And one of the things that we're aware of, become more aware of too, I think, is that contemplation and transformation of consciousness could happen at just about any age. It's possible at advanced ages too. So as we move forward into this plan, I think that may be a good part of what we will consider. And what a great step that would be. So that's where we're at in process. We're not experts, we're just limping along, just like everybody else. So I hope that gives you a little encouragement. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Margaret, so much for sharing that journey with us. It was wonderful learning and sharing it. I know that many of us here probably share some of the same frustrations and challenges that you have. Next, we are going to go into small breakout rooms just for about, I think 15 minutes, if we have time, to share or to ask the question, answer the question, can you share some initiatives your congregation has taken to initiate the Laudato Si action platform? So we're really hoping that all of you can share some of your own experiences, as Margaret and CJ did here with your group. And just know that the answer, it's okay if your answer is, we haven't done much, or I don't know, or you know, we still have work to do, because we all do, and it's a process and a journey. So we don't want anyone to feel like you're behind or ahead. but we're all in process together. So, and we'll see you in a few minutes to share with the group, share with the large group.
Okay, so this looks like our group.
Great.
And I don't know if Tess and Carolyn can show yourselves.
Okay.
There's Tess. Okay, the people in Cathay are muted, so we can't hear you. Can anyone in Cathay hear me? Everyone in Cathay is running away.
Yeah, so we're not.
So it looks like I'm the only one in this group.
Listen. Somebody want to continue? By myself. I'm staying. Staying? What about Charlton? Sorry. Okay. Catherine staying. Okay. And Peggy's staying.
I'm staying.
And Rick is staying?
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm staying. Is this
your
breakout room? Okay. Catherine, you want to share around and we'll talk a little bit this way? Can I help you? No, I'm all right. I think we're right, thank you. Okay, thanks. Wait, how about we move down one chair?
Sure.
Move down one chair. Well, they breaking through all of it. What?
Okay, you people in Cathay are all New York charities, right?
Right.
So we've heard from Margaret what's supposed to be going on. So maybe one or a few of you would like to say, how is this filtering down to the grassroots? And is there anything that you're doing or that interests you or excites you about this?
Just on a very practical level, Terry, I'm Charlotte Raftery and I'm a lucky visitor. And what I've noticed recently is that everybody is using ceramic cups. Coffee
That's
gets
great.
served in cups. I think it's, you know, it's just so, yeah, meaningful. Mhm. Instead of styrofoam cups.
That's great. Styrofoam is evil. It never biodegrades. That's been one of the tough things about COVID, that we've all been forced to use so much, particularly if you live in an institutional setting. so much plastic and all of these masks and everything. So that hasn't been good for the environment, but hopefully we're moving out of that a bit. So I'm glad to hear you're back to real mugs instead of styrofoam.
And for, you know, I think for some people to manage those cups is a challenge. You know, on some of them, there's no, they're heavy. They're heavier and thicker. Some of them are just a little bit more difficult. So 3 cheers, you know.
Yeah, we've had the same problem here at the Mother House in Convent Station. That's where I work. That the real plates and mugs and everything were too heavy for people. So we invested in lighter dinnerware and mugs and things like that. That is a real consideration. You just can't go to the dollar store and buy one of these mugs that weighs 5 pounds.
Right. This is not a contribution, but people were asking, what is the name of the other gentleman who was from Leavenworth?
John Shively. John Shively, Shivley. He's the Peace and Justice Director for Leavenworth. John Shively, yeah.
Thank you.
For us, one of the things that I'm really aware of is, you know, as Margaret was saying, not to give in to the temptation of unrealistic expectations. Again, given our median age and our energy level and all those kinds of things and our numbers, the reality is that like every sister of charity in the country could be living a perfectly sustainable lifestyle, and it wouldn't make all that much difference in the big picture, even though it is something we should do. So I'm becoming more and more conscious about how important it is to collaborate with other groups, to advocate for environmentally sustainable policies on a state level, on a national level, on a world level. And also by joining with other groups, we get a lot of new energy. Because, you know, if you're in religious life, you're used to talking to the same people for quite a few years now. So I find that linking up with other groups is something that gives new energy and helps us become part of that critical mass that Margaret was talking about. But I'm very impressed, you know, she said you're kind of poking along, but I'm very impressed by everything that the New York charities have done already. So congratulations.
Thank you. We have the advantage here of being a community of about 21, 22 people that live here. So we have that ability to live together, but also to share together. And that's one of the things that I found is very demanding of me to make sure that I listen and change my actions, some of my behavior. But that's a gift to the community that's given us that you never thought about it so much, that it was such a gift that we live together this way. So.
Yeah, I'm sure you haven't lived with 21 other people in a long time.
Well, no, but you know, we've lived in schools and worked in situations, but yeah. It's a demand for each one of us, at least for me individually, is to make sure that I'm looking at these things as something that I can do, and what is it that I can do? That's the question, you know, what is it that I can do in terms of the people that I meet on the elevator? You know, we have a whole floor here, and there are 21, 22 of us, plus the people that work here with us. But the house feeds about 300 people a meal. So
Wow.
that's a big community of people.
the kitchen cooks for 1,000 people in other facilities in the same site,
Wow.
3 times.
So that's wonderful that you, I mean, it's like a ministry you have to the other people that you live with and all the people that work there. Probably most of whom haven't had much contact with sisters in their lives, I imagine. So that's a wonderful thing that you're doing. And the little sharing you can do about more sustainable ways of living is a great service, and it multiplies itself. They'll take it home to their families and to other people that they know. But you're absolutely right. You know, don't get discouraged if you can only do little things. Pope Francis says in Laudato Si that there's a great nobility in small actions of care of creation. You know, doing the small things that you can is the little way, is very noble. So congratulations for that as well.
We have to think what our congregation has done for us. I don't think they ever, I don't think they ever thought that this would be such a community experience for us, all living together.
Mhm.
None of us have lived in this larger community, for years and years. So it's really been
I think also one way of us to get involved in is really by prayer. Really praying for the success of what's going on in say, the documents of the Holy Father. To get really praying for that. For myself, I can't do too much physically, but just knowing what's going on and really taking it seriously and making it a matter of prayer. That God's, open.
Absolutely. Yeah, the transformative power of prayer is tremendous. And that's something we can all do. You don't have to get up out of your chair. Yeah, that's very, very important. And I know a lot of people depend on your prayers.
we certainly depend on other people's prayer.
Yes.
They're very, very
Yes.
good to us.
Okay, well, I think it's time for us to move back to the larger group. But thank you very much. It was great being with you.
Terry,
Thank-
thanks for your leadership in all of this as well.
Oh,
across the-
you're very welcome.
Yes, thank you. very
All right,
much.
we'll see you back in the big group.
So the name we were asking about is John Shively. S-H-I-V-L-Y.
Yeah,
He's the man who was on with
the
Terry.
young guy,
The younger man. Oh, and the dark-
Younger, thank you.
I did say that.
We're sorry for the first one.
We are sensitive to that.
Right.
Okay, in a few seconds, we should be back.
This meeting is being recorded.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope your sharing was rich and helpful. I just want to open it up. Anyone who might want to share something in their small group that resonated with them or that inspired them, I really I want to keep it open-ended and just hear about what was shared.
There are some good surveys and plans out there already that we can communicate with others about and steal at will, I think.
I think those of us who are international congregations, it's so important, working with our sisters, brothers in other parts of the world. And one thing that struck me when Barbara Ann spoke about here and, your province here, Barbara Ann, working with the sisters, the province in Korea and the Korean experience. So I think sometimes that pulls us and stretches us to look at the whole global thing in a different way. I appreciated that sharing.
Looks like Carol has her hand raised.
Excuse me.
I would just like to say, I was just, the thought was kind of being expressed as we were ending, but CJ, I really appreciate the webinars that you do, even though I don't get to really participate really a lot. But when you were talking, it reminded me how I need to talk more with you and also our CTE committee, because one of our challenges is what would an ecological spirituality, an ecological education plan look like? And you're already doing so much of it through the webinars. So how might we join with you, even if very few sisters participate, if somehow we were linked more easily to your recordings and we promoted it on our website and it was available to more people, because you're already doing it. And so again, how do we take what we're doing and share? So that's one small aspect of maybe one way to proceed. Thank you.
Sister Barbara Ann, I see your hands up. Unmute yourself, please.
I just wanted, for a place that the diocese might not be active. I mean, our communities, wherever we are, whatever we do, if to get it publicized, bring in the newspaper, bring in whomever, because that publicity can really create energy in other people that you don't know. But it also, I think, would give a little energy to the diocesan office to know that somebody's doing it, and let's move with it, to involve other people, to connect with the local parish. So it's kind of like you don't have to wait, for the whole diocese to do something. You could just work individually, incrementally. And just, I think, the energy from the goals of the Laudato Si can energize other people. Yeah. So don't stop just because the diocese isn't doing something.
Marie Brown. Tess.
I spoke already, so go ahead, the other person.
Okay. I just want to say that given this experience today, I don't take time enough. I can't do everything, okay? So as I was looking at CJ's and Margaret too, I'm thinking, is there a way we can have a library? Last week I was UISG all week by Zoom, believe it or not. And afterwards, everything is going to be there. I believe this is a global moment. I have felt that in my bones, that this is probably the gift of our generation at this point, not letting something die simply because we're median age of 85 or whatever it is. But I believe that I'm not techie, everybody knows that, but if there was, it's kind of like what the internet has done for me in terms of accessing things, the charism in this time, the spirituality of ecological spirituality, in the spirit of the ancestors and today, wouldn't that be something? Like I got all excited about a retreat. And that's all I'm going to say. But creating, we would help pay if we had some sort of clearinghouse or treasure house to be able to, when we have the opportunity to watch and to participate. Thank you.
Thank you. Myra, I see you've got your hand physically up. I see you down.
So I appreciate Mary Beth what you were just saying to that idea of like a clearinghouse. My question was going to be, I was wondering about intersectionality. And in the earlier presentations, we spoke about the different types of engagements that sisters are involved in. And also, I heard a little bit about like immigration and or like anti-racism or after George Floyd. And so I was just wondering in the group here, I know Susan's been looking to like at land acknowledgement, and I'm just wondering to how we look at some of that as we are doing this, because I think it's very important that our Indigenous brothers and sisters, as well as our various groups of color who have been built our countries, how do we go forward? It may not be within our congregation, but how do we collaborate with others so that, well, that the spirit can lead us into a new way? I just wondered if others have been working on some of that too, please.
Myra?
Yes, I appreciate the group that I was in because they've really, like I look outside and we're starting to put seeds in the ground, but the group that I was in created a garden for me, a future garden. And here in St. John, New Brunswick, it's a port city. It is, it's becoming a little bit more cosmopolitan. Immigrants are coming in. I volunteer at St. Vincent's de Paul. It's for food and for clothes for those who need it. And I want to bring in that presence of ecology and wonderment of the world and taking care of each other, but taking care of the earth. And I'm going to learn how to do it. I know I'm in my 70s, but that's one of the things I want to do before I leave the earth. And just to leave behind a flower or a thought or something. And everybody here is so wonderful. You all have gifts of wonder. And thank you, because I think you're lighting a little fire underneath my chair here. And I do want to get more involved. And thank you so much.
That's beautiful, Myra. Thank you. Thank you. Kitty?
I'd like to pick up on a point that Tess Brown made. We met some years ago, Tess. I'm Eileen Kelly. The idea of collaboration, where we live here in Catay, is a new Jewish home. So there are other activities here whereby we do influence what goes on here. And we have been able here to kind of focus on some of the recycling, but it's also a consciousness raising. And as Vatican II said, we don't have to be the initiators of everything. We can join groups that are trying to do the same thing. So that whole idea of collaboration, especially here in the Bronx, which has seen so much violence and everything else and making headlines in so many different areas, but forgetting, they actually restored the Bronx River. And it seems like a small trivia, but because I remember it as a child, what you can do with that actually cleaned up what was a little dump at the edge of the Bronx River near Bronx Zoo, and actually cleaned it so that now only paddle boats can go in it. You can't contaminate it with any kind of oil driven or diesel driven It may seem like a small thing, but it created, just out of a pure little dump site, a whole new piece. Significant that it's a piece of the only river in New York City. I just find the symbolism of that pretty overpowering, especially since it was Einstein who told his daughter that the most potent energy in the world is love. That's the cosmic energy. Just as a reminder, he died on the octave day of Easter after Tayar.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Father Terry?
I was following up on what Tess said about intersectionality. We just passed, the Sisters of Charity St. Elizabeth passed a public stand on racism. And one of the things it says is that we'll bring an anti-racist lens to all our other activities in peace, justice, and ecology. And we're becoming very aware of, well, I mean, it's no news to anybody that it's people of color and indigenous people who have suffered from environmental injustice earliest and most severely. So I don't know, some of you who are on this Zoom, I think, have participated in, you know, that group Nuns and Nuns? They've just completed a wonderful 5-session series on land, religious congregations, their land, and people of color and indigenous people. And it's all, you can access it all on their website. Tremendous speakers and resources, written resources. So I encourage everybody to look at that. One of the things that we're going to do is have an environmental justice tour of the city of Newark, where the Sisters of Charity of St. Elizabeth were founded. So you can see clearly how the poorest neighborhoods are the ones that have the most polluting industries in them by orders of magnitude. So thanks to Tess for bringing that up. And I think that's a very important thing we have to bring to this conversation. That's what Pope Francis is talking about when he says integral ecology.
Any changes in my TV. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Father Terry. We're running low on time, but I'm going to let Sister Barbara Ann take the last comment here.
I just wanted to support the empowerment of our First Nation peoples in our surrounding areas. We have just did a rededication of a peace garden that we had put together about 8 years ago. And I went through the Historic Society of Westmoreland County, and they introduced me to a family, a First Nation group. And so I went, visited them, and had a wonderful conversation. And so they came with the drum circle and with the blessing of the garden. So that has led us now to the next step of encouragement of this relationship. When we begin our planting of our potatoes, we have about an acre, they will come and they will bless the land as well. And our hope is that in a year or two, whatever, that we will begin to see how we can incorporate First Nation people's recognition of the land that we live on. So it's not as difficult as it may seem to begin a conversation with our First Nation peoples. It's one of those things, they are so invisible. And so we have to take the step to move and discover who they are. And they might be, like in our case, only 20 minutes away.
Thank you for lifting that up. And you're right, it is an important piece of that intersectionality and anti-racism work to remember the people who first occupied a lot of the land that we now occupy. I want to say thank you to everyone for coming on. I want to extend a special thank you to CJ and Sister Margaret for sharing their time so graciously with us and their wonderful presentations. And thank you to all the participants from last November and today. Especially if you've made it on here twice, you're a real trooper, and thank you for coming and being a part of this and sharing with us. So I just want to lift up one last thing as we were talking about the idea of a library or clearinghouse. Charity Earth Network is still working with the Federation on having a place on the Federation website to provide resources specific to the charity charism. And we may even entertain ideas of things that are not charity specific, but that have been, that people have vetted as quality, like others mentioned over the quantity of stuff that's floating around out there. So a quick note, if you want something to be included in that, or you have an idea or something you want shared, you can email that to me. In the meantime, I'm starting to gather things. And that is at jpic@scls.org. And I'm going to put it in the chat for people real quick before we hop off. So you can copy that down if you would like to. And send an email there and we'll start gathering stuff. And hopefully we can get it up soon. The Federation just migrated their website and some stuff. I don't understand it all, but hopefully, fingers crossed, soon we're going to have that resource page that we can share with others.
Did you put that up again? I didn't write it fast enough.
Yeah, it should still be in the chat if you go click at the bottom.
Okay.
But
I see it. Okay.
Okay. I want to thank you all for coming. Thank you for sharing your time. It's so wonderful to be with the Federation peoples again, and we'll see you maybe next time. Maybe we'll have another one. Who knows? So take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.